Hey, Eagles fans, this is Chris Franklin from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No-Huddle Show podcast, the show where we discuss all things related to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, before we begin, I want to remind you all that you can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles and make sure to bookmark that to get the latest Eagles news and analysis. Today, I'm once again joined by my No-Huddle Show co-hosts, Bob Brookover and Cayden Steele. On this show, guess what, everybody? It's draft day. It's draft week. We're getting ready for that 2024 draft that is set to take place on Thursday night. We'll go over the scenarios that the Eagles will face and give you a few names to look out for over the draft weekend. But first, it's time to bring in Bob and Cayden. Guys, welcome to draft week. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's happy draft week. Draft eve. Happy draft eve. My stockings are hung. I'm waiting for a player.
Now, if that's the case, we got to see if the Eagles were good or naughty or nice this year, because they're sitting right now at the 22nd pick. And, Cayden, I'm going to start with you. When it comes to that, do you have any, when you look at this draft memories, like if you had to say, if you were a general manager, do you think you have any superstition to make sure that you can get the player that you want? Do you think Howie has any superstitions?
I'm not sure if he has, any superstitions, or I do think Howie is, we've seen him in, recent years be more aggressive, especially going up and making sure that he can get, Jalen Carter and Devontae Smith. And it might be more, learning from past lessons with the, sitting there and taking Jalen Reagor. The few times he has sitting there in the first round and or has moved back, it hasn't really panned out. So maybe that, is part of it. But I don't know if he has any superstitions. He seems like a guy, who's confident in himself. He doesn't need any of that extra luck. So not sure.
I get you. Bob, would you have any superstitions if you were heading into draft night, just to make sure the right player fell down to you?
I would rub Jeffrey Lurie's lucky billfold. That's what I would do. And then tell him I'm going to spend a lot of your money, and I enjoy doing it. And I would remind him that I like to trade.
Well, that's a good segue to our first topic right now. Once again, the Eagles are right now sitting pretty at the 22nd pick overall. They will definitely like to be the 32nd, winning Super Bowl, but they find themselves with that early exit. They find themselves at 22 right now, which is a weird spot to be in, because depending on how you grade this draft class out, how many people have first round grades. But let's get the ball started with you, Bob. We all know Howie Roseman's history with trading up or trade down. He just likes to be straight. He even admitted during a pre-draft press conference that's one of his favorite things he likes to do. What do you think is more like? What do you think? Do you think they trade up or trade down? And who do you think will be the target in the first round?
I think they're more likely to trade up. I mean, that's been, although he has traded back too, but more often he has traded up. I looked at some fascinating things about the 22nd pick. It's the pick that nobody wants, because in this century, 62% of the teams that have had the 22nd pick have traded it. So I don't think anybody wants it. But Howie's MO is to trade up and try to get the best player he possibly can. That's the way I see him going. Who are the players he might target? Well, if it's cornerback, I think the two guys you got to really trade up far for are Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold from Alabama, and Toledo. Mitchell's from Toledo. Now, if you want one of the top three tackles, you probably have to trade up even farther. I don't think Alt's within their range. But, you probably have to trade up pretty far to get Fuega. I'm drawing some blanks here right now, but he might be the second best on that list. You can probably maybe get J.C. Latham, or Marcus Mims by maybe just trading up mentally, maybe not at all with Mims. So, I mean, I think – I don't know what their board looks like. So that's the disadvantage, is you don't know what the board looks like. But you got to think that those guys are that I just mentioned are high on their board. And I think they're going to try to go up to get one. That doesn't mean they are going to get one. I mean, there have been times in the past, Patrick Surtain's, there was a guy they wanted But just because you want him, that if you want him, that means other teams want him. So it's very easily for teams to say, regardless what package you're sending them, no, because you're going to draft the guy we want to draft, and we're not going to make that trade. So that's also a possibility that doesn't get talked about a lot.
Nice, very, very good. Kate, what say you on this? Do you think they'd trade up or down? And if they do so, who's the target?
Yeah, I think, Bob kind of ran through it, but I do think they trade up. They've done it, for 3 consecutive years, and 22 is kind of a no man land because you expect before pick 20 that there's going to be a big tackle run, possibly guys like Fuaga, even J.C. Latham and Troy Fatanu from Washington. All those guys could be off the board. Same with Quinton Mitchell and Terrion Arnold. So if you don't want to get stuck there and have to choose between, let's say it's, maybe Nate Wiggins or maybe Cooper DeJean or Tyler Guyton and Grant Barton, those guys of the world, you would definitely want to move up. And if they make a big move up, there's into the top 15, I think it would be for Quinton Mitchell, just because, Terrion Arnold is another guy they could like, but Quinton Mitchell had a really good Senior Bowl. He's a really good athlete. He's the type of guy that could grow into a potential elite number 1 corner. Kind of not saying they're a similar player, but, kind of a similar background to Sauce Gardner, coming from a small school, has all the traits that you're looking for. So I could see the Eagles getting aggressive and moving up to get the top corner. It might be difficult to do that because you might have to get as high as number 12 with Denver because, the Raiders have a need for corner. Indy has a need for corner. Jacksonville has a need for corner. If they like Terrion Arnold, they could maybe move up ahead of Jacksonville possibly if he's cornerback too. So those are some possibilities. I also think there's a world, if they really prioritize this tackle class and they want to get a guy that can be Lane Johnson's heir apparent eventually, when you look at it, I think they'll need someone that has some guard tackle flexibility. So it might be a little easier getting up to like pick 18, 19 possibly, to get a guy like J.C. Latham if he slips and he could plug in that guard as a rookie. So those are some possibilities, but I definitely see them moving up or potentially down. I don't see them sticking at number 22, where I don't think the values can be that great.
Good stuff as well, too. I look at this draft. To me, I think this has potential to be like 2014 all over again, but I think Howie may make a better pick than Marcus Smith because I look at it. I think if anything, I'm in a minority here. I'm thinking they maybe trade back because I look at the way this draft is going and I look at the overall picks they have. If they're going to move up, they're probably going to have to include one of those 2s. And I know I keep hearing Seattle doesn't have a 2, so maybe they should go up and trade with them. I don't know if there's going to be a player, the players that they would value when it's for tackles. I think of that one too. I'm worried about everybody being gone by then. And if that's the case, I'm trying to trade back, and I'm trying to court the Arizona Cardinals. See, because the fact they brought in something about me with them and Letalu Latu from UCLA to an edge rusher. I just think they're very interested in him, and so I think he can probably get an additional pick, maybe a future 2. Another future 2, maybe a 2 this year as well too, to look at that. But I'm looking at them to me, if I'm trading up as Latham, but something tells me all these guys, the way the board falls they may have to trade back, and it's going to be one of those wow, it's 11 o'clock. The Eagles are still waiting to get on the clock, and they go back way. We're like, guys, I just want to write. But yeah, I'm seeing it more of a trade back. It's going out because for me personally, I have 18. There's 18 guys I have first round grades on right now, and yeah, it's going to be tough. I think everybody's going to stand pat unless there's a lot of quarterbacks, unless there's a 6th quarterback taken. But yeah, who knows about that? Let's get to the next one too. Cayden, if there had to be a dream draft scenario for the Eagles, what would it be? And also in the same vein, what's the nightmare for them to happen?
Yeah, the dream scenario is that you either sit there at 22 and you get lucky and one of the top tackles falls because it's a really strong tackle class, and maybe one of these guys will slip through the cracks, whether that's Latham or Fuaga or it might be tough for that to happen, but you never know with the draft, especially if Bo Nix and Michael Penix sneak in the top 20, whether you agree or not, whether that should happen. Quarterbacks get pushed up, and there's certain Brian Thomas, if he goes in the top 20, could push one of these tackles down. or, if Terrion Arnold or Quinton Mitchell, slip maybe to like 18 or 19. Peter Schrager reported, last week that he's heard the Rams with, good friends with Sean McVay. He heard the Rams want to draft an offensive player and almost pretty much guaranteed it. So maybe the Rams would be willing to trade like a 22-19 trade to go get the corner. That would be the dream scenario. The nightmare scenario is that you get stuck there. Chris, you mentioned you had 18 first-round grades. You get stuck there, and all the top tackles are gone. All the top corners are gone. Let's say Cooper DeJean goes for like 20 to Pittsburgh as well. 3 of the corners are gone. Latham's off the board. The best tackle available is like Tyler Guyton and like Jordan Morgan and guys like that. You might have an edge rusher available like Jared Verse or maybe even Latu, but not really the position of need that you really have to prioritize in this draft. And you don't get the player that that could make an impact in the secondary or on the offensive line that you might be prioritizing. So I think in that scenario they would have to trade down, and I think trading down not necessarily a nightmare, but it's not necessarily what they want to do, and they could get caught in that situation where they have to settle for a player again. A la Marcus Smith, even though he probably won't be as bad as Marcus Smith, like you said, Chris. But you don't want to be in a position where you feel like you have to settle. So.
Cool. What do you think, Bob?
Well, it depends on how far the going down scenario. I don't hate it, but it depends on how far down you're going to have to go. I wouldn't go out of the first round because I think you really start to have a slip off after the first round. But if I can go down and be in and get a third round pick back, and then have two in the 50s, one in the 30, and one in the 80s. That's 4 in the top 100. You start playing a numbers game. Is that the dream scenario? No, the dream scenario is you get I don't know if this is the guy, but the dream scenario is you get whoever is, and whatever you have to do, you're able to move up and get Quinton Mitchell, or if that's their guy, or Terrion Arnold if that's their guy, but or one of these offensive tackles. That's the dream scenario, is to be able to get one of those guys. No guarantee that's going to happen. The scenario I would love to see play out, because I would love to see what this guy is going to be as an NFL player. I would love to see him just stand pat at 22 and Cooper DeJean be there and be able to take him. And see what Vic Fangio does with Cooper DeJean. Since we've heard so much about how he can play outside, he can play slot, he can play safety. He's a hybrid player. I would love to see what Vic Fangio did with Cooper DeJean. That is my dream scenario. I don't think that's the Eagles' dream scenario, but that's what I would love to see play out.
Nice. Now, I think for the best thing for them is J.J. McCarthy. The names this here: J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and maybe Spencer Rattler going in the first round. I think that's the best one for them, because as many quarterbacks are taken, I think that pushes everybody down as well too. To me, a wild card. I know they got Bryce Huff, but to me, if Jared Verse starts to slip more and more into that Goldilocks zone, and I know we just got off the thing where it says rather trade up or trade down, but if he starts to fall down toward that 16, 17, 18, I think that's when the phone calls start to really truly heat up, because I think he could be a guy that you could have long term and you can still get a lot of who can provide that pressure that you can do, and he's athletic enough to drop back and cover. I think that's one guy to watch as well too. But and then the more and more quarterbacks that continue taking early on, I think you're gonna get one of those 3, like either Latham, either Guyton, or Mims as well too. I think that puts you in a position to get one of them as well too. So I think for me, it's all about the quarterbacks. It's all about hoping a couple of these teams reach really, really high, thinking that everybody else. It's almost like the old peer pressure commercial. Everybody else is doing it. Get a quarterback early, and the next thing you know, you're like, and we'll see them in 3 years going, shouldn't have done this. This is pretty bad. When it comes to that, I think that's one of those things that we see. Am I wrong thinking that the quarterback? Am I wrong thinking there's going to be too many quarterbacks? Are we taking somebody's going to reach like say 6 guys, maybe 7 in the back end if somebody takes Rattler 32? You think Is you think that's too far fetched that you see 6 guys go?
Six quarterbacks in the first round.
Yeah,
quarterbacks, right? Yeah,
quarterbacks. Yeah.
No, I think that's possible for sure. The wild cards are Bo Nix and Penix. And I guess to a lesser extent, it's going to be interesting to see where J.J. McCarthy goes, but I do think he's definitely going to be one of those guys that goes in the top 32. But I think Bo Nix and Michael Penix are the 2 wild cards here.
I agree with you, Chris. I don't think it's crazy. I right now I at least think 5 go, and right now if you're Denver, I know people are made a whole joke about the Zach Wilson trade right now. That's a team that feels like they don't have a second round pick, and they could decide to go into the year with Jared Stidham and Zach Wilson and Ben DiNucci as your quarterbacks. But that's a tough sell, especially for a coach like Sean Payton. And you're in a position where if you don't get the quarterback now, I'm not sure if Spencer Rattler's there in the 3rd round either. You might have to take a guy like Michael Pratt or Devin Leary. Like, they don't really have a lot of options. So it almost seems like that could be, the trade back scenario possibly if the Eagles want to move up, because maybe they move back into the 20s to get, Bo Nix or Michael Penix. It seems like the Raiders, from reports, have interest in Michael Penix as well. And there might be some other teams, they're quarterback needy in the future that could be willing to move up into the end of the 1st round. So 6 is really possible. And even though 6 probably don't deserve to get taken.
That's for sure. Somebody's going to we're going to be looking back at this next topic we're about to approach right now. I think some people when they look next year are going to go, oof, maybe it's not looking good, because we're almost approaching 1 year, guys, of the 2023 class being selected. And just to go over those names that are all taken during that time, you had defensive tackle Jalen Carter finished as a runner-up for defensive rookie of the year. You had Nolan Smith, who saw more time in the second half, but only finished with 1 sack. You had Tyler Steen, who may be coming in as the starting right guard this year. You don't know yet on there. Safety Sidney Brown, Keely Ringo, the quarterback Tanner McKee, and Mauro Jomo, who's been really quiet when it comes in terms of just overall people talking about his potential role coming up next year. He can play defensive end, defensive tackle. Now that we've seen a full year from these guys and projecting what their roles could be for this upcoming season, what grade, Bob, I'll start with you, Bob, on this one. What grade would you give that draft class looking back at what they've done?
God, I hate grading classes after 1 year. But I mean, for last year, I would say a B, because Carter was so good, especially early in the season. But, I thought he was pretty good all the way through. Nolan Smith, almost impossible to grade. He came on at the end. One of the things, I'm just going to take you back to the 22 class. Jordan Davis wasn't asked to do that much as a rookie because there was so much depth at the position. Cam Jurgens wasn't asked to do almost nothing, and he had to play, I think, 1 game, moved in to start. Kobe Dean didn't contribute a lot. Kyron Johnson, not at all. Grant Calcaterra, very little. They got very little out of that class, that rookie class, right? And didn't need to, because they obviously went to the Super Bowl. Whereas this class, everybody expected them to get a lot out of Carter when you take a guy that high in the number 9 overall. Didn't need a lot from Smith. Tyler Steen, actually, his 1 start may have them worried about that right guard spot going forward. They probably had to ask more than they wanted to from Sidney Brown. The same true late in the season of Keely Ringo. I mean, they didn't want him to have to contribute that much. Tanner McKee, we all know, is going to be the next Eagles franchise quarterback. And you make a great point about Jomo. He's kind of a wild card going forward. He has some potential, but they started to have to depend on guys like Smith more in the playoffs than they probably wanted to. Sidney Brown late in the season until towards ACL, and Ringo more than they wanted to. And I think that especially on the back end when you're starting to lean on Sidney Brown and Keely Ringo, that was probably part of the problem with the defense, is that you were relying on those guys more than you wanted to. And then, Sidney Brown had some good moments, but he also had some really bad ones. So I would say a B because Carter's performance, but it's a TBD really, as also the 2022 class. They're both TBDs, in my mind.
Gotcha. Cool. What about you, Cayden?
Yeah, like Bob said, it's tough to grade a class after 1 year, especially, some positions it takes longer for players to develop. Like corner for Keely Ringo, we really don't know what he is yet, even though, at times when thrown into action at the end of the year, he did really flash. Nolan Smith, we don't know what he is. Coming out, some people thought he'd be a top 15 pick, and he slipped there to the end of the first round. And when the Eagles picked him last year, it seemed like a huge steal. But after 1 year of little production, you have to have some worries. No reason to panic yet. Some guys just take longer to develop. And coming into the league, one of the concerns from what I remember is, just his build. You don't see a lot of edge rushers who are that slim. And, no one's obviously probably been in the weight room, and he's probably going to continue to get, stronger and, faster. So, this year is going to be a big year to see, that development, because right now he's a real incomplete grade because, it's hard to project him going forward. But the prospect that he was in college, the Eagles were really excited. So there's still a chance that he becomes that player. Obviously, they had some confidence, in him by trading, away Hassan Reddick. They still have Josh Sweat, but he's only under contract for 1 more year. So, in that building, they still probably believe in Nolan Smith. Guys like McKee and Njomo, we really don't know. McKee, had a good preseason last year, but they did bring in Kenny Pickett and Will Grier, so it doesn't seem like the Eagles have the utmost, confidence in him as well. And, like Bob said, Tyler Steen in a little action, struggled and kind of had to make that transition from tackle to guard. And, that's tougher than people think. So we don't really know about him as well, but they did land it, or they did nail it with Jalen Carter, at least, it seems, if he can keep it up now and stay focused. They might have one of the most premier defensive tackles in the league for a long time, and it's a hard position to hit on in the league. There's not a lot of those guys, and he showed potential as a rookie that makes you think that one day he could be that Jeffrey Simmons type, and that's the reason why guys like Byron Murphy might go even in the top 10 this year. It's hard to find those guys, and they did. So overall, I'd probably give him about a B- or a C+. But it's hard to give right now because next year, if Nolan Smith develops into a good starter and gets you 7 or 8 sacks, and Tyler Steen starts all 17 games at guard, and Sidney Brown recovers and looks like an outstanding safety, then it's an A. So it's really tough right now. But last year, they didn't get a ton of production from the rookies other than Jalen Carter and some flashes from Sidney Brown.
All right, give you guys some background, at least just for people breaking the fourth wall here when it comes to listening to us. Like we're all recording in different spots right now. So like Bob's in his spot, Cayden's in his spot, and I'm at my spot. Cayden, were you reading my notes? Did you copy off me at any time?
No, I didn't.
I just checking with that one too, because I was kid you not. I've been going back and forth between a B- and a C+. That's why I'm like, because I look at it, it's not so much the Carter pick I had no problem with. It's the Nolan Smith, which became a de facto, even though it was the first, it's almost like a second round pick, and Tyler Steen are the ones that to me are bringing the grade down a little bit. Even with Nolan Smith, if he put, to me, I have questions now. I like the pick when it first happened. I really thought he could be that edge rusher that can really get that bend around there, get that quickness around the tackle. And I know he still was a year in, but when he let too many offensive linemen get on his inside pads, and he didn't have developed like second or third counter move to get around these guys, and he just basically once he's like almost like a Velcro to him. So that's why I'm hoping that Jeremiah Washburn is really like works with him during OTAs and training camp to get that other move, because I have real legit concerns about him now about trying to get around that edge. And And you think, especially for that spot, and it's good that they got him at 32 and 30 because that means he got the 5th-year option to pick it up. But you don't know now, and this is why I think this is next upcoming year is going to be the most pivotal with him because if he doesn't do anything, it's going to be And the same goes for Tyler Steen. I mean, when you look at Steen, the way he goes in, to me, I know he was a former tackle going to guard, and I know this can be a difference for that. It can take some time to get used to that in a way. But every time I see him when he's on the field, like whether it was practice or whether that one too, to me he looks better at tackle. Like when he filled in, when Mailata or Lane Johnson need to get rest and they threw him in there, he looked really good as a tackle. When you get in the guard, you had your questions about it. And I'm hoping the year of experience improves that part. And maybe the competition, if they do take an offensive lineman that first round, maybe the competition does do him well and he gets used to that. But I feel more confident about Brown, Ringo, and Ojomo than I think everybody else. And the reason why I left out McKee is I know he looks like he's going to be the 3rd round pick. I know they signed Will Greer, but yeah, from people I've been talking to, they say they're still very high on McKee taking that 3rd spot. So overall, like you can see the potential in this draft class, and I hope I eat my words out next year when we do this. Is like, Chris, remember Chris? You should say this. I just hope I'm wrong about those about Smith and Steen, but my stomach's a little uneasy right now looking into the way they're developing.
Your Honor, I offer you on Nolan Smith 188 defensive snaps the whole year. That's 16%. I got to give him more. And I also offer up Brandon Graham's first 2 years in the NFL. We're not very encouraging, and he has Brandon Graham in his ear, and Brandon basically told us he has him in his ear and told him, here's what you need to be thinking, son. So he has that going for him. With Tyler Steen, his defense, I'll give you Jermaine Mayberry, who the Eagles drafted as a tackle and eventually had to move to guard. And he ended up, by the end of his career, was a 2nd-team All-Pro offensive guard in 2002, and really a good player for this franchise. Plus, I have a soft spot for him. One of the nicest people I ever met in my life. But I'll give you those two. You know, it's just I'll go back to my thing. I hate grading rookies because by the 3rd year, if you're not seeing some progress, then it's time to start worrying. But with these two guys, you at least got to give them some chance to improve, and we'll see what happens.
Fair enough. We'll allow the evidence. We'll allow the evidence. There's a motion granted for that one on there. And Bob, we'll stick with you on this one too. This next one, the Eagles do have those 2 second-round picks, 50 and 53rd overall. When you look at their usage of that, what do you think they'll do with them?
I'll start with the 53rd because I did extensive research on the 53rd overall pick. There've been 24 of them in this century. Only 4 have made the Pro Bowl. Three of them were Eagles. The Eagles at the 53rd pick have picked their last 3 picks of 53 have all been Pro Bowls. LaShawn McCoy, that was pretty good. Miles Sanders, also pretty good, and Jalen Hurts, really, really good. So do you really want to give up your 53rd pick? It would be really odd, though, if Howie Roseman said, "Oh, you want our 50th pick, but we'll give you our 50th pick, but we're just not going to give you our 53rd." When he was negotiating, that would be a little strange, But I do think he's going to at least try to move one of those guys to move up in this draft. If you want to get really high on them. There's part of me that says, hey, you know what? It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if you had 50 and 53. We all talk about trying to recoup a 3rd round pick. Well, better than having a 3rd round pick is having 2-3 picks apart in the 2nd round. I wouldn't think it was the worst thing in the world if they still had those 2 picks. And, if you start getting down to where they only have to move up to get the guy they want to 18 or 19, then you got a chance to really keep those 2 picks. But my thought is they're going to use one of them to try to, and it'll be the 53rd, my favorite pick in team history. they're going to use it to try to get up even higher on the board. Will they be successful? We'll see, but that's what I think will happen with them.
And it's hard to believe that New Orleans Saints trade is still in play. Like when they initially traded back in 2022. And I wonder what Mickey Loomis is thinking right now. If he had to go back, would he redo that deal? Because, the first round pick in the previous year that helped him eventually get A.J. Brown. And now you got this second round pick here. Yeah, it just keeps going. It just keeps going on that one. Cayden, day 3, is where a lot of scouts and a lot of general managers make their money at, because that's where they find the sleepers and the gyms around that time. Could you give us a couple day 3 sleepers that you think would fit this roster?
Yeah, originally I wanted to go with Malik Washington for a wide receiver from Virginia, but I'm not sure if he goes day 3 anymore, so I crossed him off my list. But the 2 guys that stand out to me, potentially as day 3 options, for the Eagles. One is if they don't take a wide receiver on day 2 with one of the second round picks, or even potentially their 4th round pick if they don't grab someone at 120. Taj Washington, the wide receiver from USC, there would be some risk involved because he is only 5'9", 174 pounds. He is skinny, he is short, and he doesn't have the prototypical size that you want from an NFL wide receiver, but he's super explosive. He was productive at USC. And the one thing that he would bring to this offense is, even though, Devontae and AJ are explosive players, he could go up in the slot and be a true deep threat. He led the Pac-12 last year with 5+ catches of 50 yards. He could stretch the field from anywhere. He's a good route runner. He's super explosive, and he's reliable. He only had 1 drop on 74 targets last year. So the thing with him is, if he was, maybe 6 foot in 190, he'd probably be a 3rd or 4th round pick. Or he's a really good football player from USC. Brendan Rice was there as well, another guy who's probably going to go in the 3rd or 4th round. But just from watching some Caleb Williams, it seems like he had a nice rapport with Taj Washington. And if he can stay durable in the NFL and the size isn't too much of an issue in the slot, he might be a really productive player as that 3rd wide receiver. And you might be able to get him in the 5th, even maybe the 6th round. The other guy for me that stands out is Xavier Thomas, the defensive end from Clemson. The Eagles could, Chris, you mentioned, the outside the box thinking is that maybe they do take a pass rusher in the 1st round, whether it's Jared Verse or Letu. So if that happens, I'm not sure if they would target someone like this on day 3, but if they don't and they just are looking more for that rotational edge, Thomas would fit. One, because he's super experienced. He's been in college since 2018. He's a 6-year player in college with a ton of experience at Clemson. Wasn't overly productive, but got hurt a few years ago. Was a projected top 50 pick like 2 years ago. He was a big name. Has kind of gone under the radar, but he's got an super explosive first step. He knows how to, bend around tackles, and he's a really good player. And if you could get him in the 4th round, you might have that 3rd or 4th option to rotate. And we know how the Eagles like to rotate. And right now, I think they're kind of missing that option unless they really trust Zach Bond to develop into that type of player. So he would be good depth in his experience, and he seems like he's kind of pro ready, which he should be after playing in college for 6 years.
Yeah, good pick. Especially, I like the Washington one as well too. He was on one of the lists of like a wide receivers if the Eagles were looking at like potentially a slot, because especially I think a lot of people are going to look at the Caleb Williams film and then he's going to pop. I liked him. I also like Luke McCaffrey, and also Dylan Lau from New Hampshire. Luke McCaffrey with a Rice. I think that's more like a Greg Ward guy who you play quarterback before to find those empty spots, and the next thing you know, he can settle down. It also helps he's a McCaffrey, so we know how that goes. And Lau, short running back. I think of Boston Scott. I think he's more receiving Boston Scott. That's why I think those guys for that. But those good names. I appreciate that. Good names like that. Now, before we all go, thank you guys for sticking around. Before we go, we do have to talk about a contract extension that was the Eagles recently gave out, and that went to one wide receiver, Devonta Smith. Smith, a former 2021 10th overall pick, he's made himself into one of the top, I'd probably say top 15 and arguably when you look at some of the statistics since he's entered the league, top 10 receivers in there now. So we're working the opposite of AJ Brown now. So before we go, Bob, what do you think? What do you think about the extension, and also who do you think is next in line for to receive a new contract?
I love the extension. I think Devontae Smith's a terrific player. I think he might even be a better player than we've realized. Having AJ Brown certainly takes targets and catches away from him. The AJ Brown thing, everybody wants to find a reason for AJ Brown to leave, and we had another one, I guess, this week to take us in, not to take us into another subject, but I don't read AJ Brown's tweets and read too much into any of them. You can make yourself insane doing that. But anyway, I love the Devontae extension. Who's next? Maybe Cam Jurgens, although we're still a little ways away from that. From that draft class, maybe a Milton Williams at some point here. It's not going to be a major deal. I mean, are you talking about a major deal or just any deal?
I think a player of significance, like any deal that one too. So yeah, that's a good one. Milton's a good one.
I don't know what Milton's market would be, but I just think he's a really underrated player. He's been good for them. Not great, but good. And a big part of that rotation. And we know how much the Eagles love having their defensive line rotation, and they should. I was talking to somebody recently just about how, everybody's talking about the Giants, and I go back to the Giants because I covered the Giants, their defensive line getting Brian Burns and how good it could be with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence. But they also lost Leonard Williams. And when you start thinking about the Giants line rotation, and obviously they rely heavily on they're going to rely heavily on those three guys. But part of the Eagles' success as a defensive line has always been that rotation, which is, why there's some concern right now with Hassan Reddick leaving and as we go back to Nolan Smith, what is he going to be and how's he going to be part of that rotation? But Milton Williams has been a part of that rotation, and played a lot more snaps, I think, than people realize. He played almost 50% of the team's snaps last year, and he's played over 40% in his 3 years with the team. So let's go with Milton Williams as the next guy up to get an extension.
Oh, thanks. And Cayden, what do you think?
Yeah, Milton Williams is a good choice by Bob, and he's been a really, productive player, and we know how the Eagles valued that rotation. I wouldn't be surprised if they got him, back on a contract extension. If he were to hit the open market as a free agent next year, some team would pay him. Defensive tackles are hard to find, and he'd get a bigger contract than most people think. So that's a good choice. Cam Jurgens is the next most obvious one, replacing Jason Kelce, or at least it seems it's going to, be that way going forward. And if he could provide, solid play this year, and I think the Eagles will lock him up, pretty quickly to a contract extension. He'll have 1 year on his deal after this year. So Cam Jurgens would be my pick. I do think there's an outside shot. We know how the Eagles like to, sign their Reed Blankenships early and their TJ Edwards. If a guy like Isaiah Rodgers comes in after just getting reinstated and he performs well in the secondary as an outside corner and has a big role, that's one that could be, a surprise one as well.
Good wild card, Cayden. Good wild card.
That's good one. Just get back to Devontae Smith's stats. They got him back up here again. He's 11th since he entered the league. And for 3 years he's been for the time he's played, the seasons he's played, 11th in the league in targets, 10th in receptions, 9th in receiving yards, 10th in receiving touchdowns, tied for 9th in first downs, tied for 5th in average depth of targets, and 7th with quarterback rating targeted. So yeah. 3 years, $75 million with $51 million guaranteed. Yeah, I think he deserves that. As for the next guys, I'm looking more like, I think Milton Williams is a good one. I think also Isaiah Rodgers is another good one. It's probably too special that. I'm looking at it, I'm torn, and I'm going to lean with Josh Sweat because I was going to go Jordan Davis. Well, I think he still needs to show a lot. especially even if they exercise his 5th-year option and then try to rework it. Say if they almost do something similar to what they did with Devonta Smith, that would have got. But I look at Josh Sweat, and it's hard to find an edge rusher now that like to find consistent edge rushers. And because I'll put this caveat out there. I know he struggled in the second half of the last season, but 6.5. He's a former Pro Bowler. He has 6.5 sacks. I think with a more focused rush now, I think he can see a lot of them. I think he can get back to the level that he was capable of doing a couple of years ago when he went to the Pro Bowl. And I also think that when you look at his age still, he's still young enough that he can still be an impact guy, a guy who can still get around the edge with quickness, and who's, in my opinion, sort of shed that injury-prone moniker that was placed on him. I think he could be a guy that can still be disruptive. And as for how much he can be, I don't know. I don't have contract parameters right now, but looking at this, I think a tandem of him and potentially Huff or whoever comes in, if they draft one, or even Nolan Smith. If one of the things, so I think he could do well enough where it'll be like he can get like a 2 or 3 year contract extension. Doesn't have to break the bank, but it'll still be something that it get decent value with on that one. All right, that's it, guys. I appreciate you guys coming on. How are you guys going to be spending the draft night?
Well, I'm going to be spending with you, Chris, in the beautiful NovaCare Complex media room that we really enjoy. And I'm going to, when we get done writing, I'm going to fist bump, and then I'm going to go home. That's it.
That's cool.
How about you?
How about you? Well, I know I'm going to be in there, and I'll probably be upstairs for a little bit. That's for that something about that room. I don't know what for those who for give you inside the media house. There's 2 levels in there.
One of those hoity-toity upstairs people, are we?
It's a fun story. Like, you know what? It seems like everything like it's a fun time down there. I still remember this, and from 2022, the 2022 draft, there are 2 TVs on there. There's one reporter. I'll leave out the name out there who wanted to see the Sixers play, and the draft was on the other TV, and we were both up there. That was the day when I remember up there, including person for person. It was Peter King, Sal Powell, myself, and Mike Kay, and it was a person. We're all sitting there watching the draft, and so this all of a sudden, everybody's phone's going off, and this is a family show, so I won't say the words that were said, but that was the top moment that the A.J. Brown trade went down. And it was like, okay, and those seats, comfortable, like, yeah, they almost, the sheer of running down, trying to find information that was going on, yeah, they almost tipped over. So that was kind of fun. And ever since then, I'm like, you know what? I think I want to try to watch the draft up here, at least the first round up here, and do that. So yeah, it'll be that fun too. Kate, how about you? How do you typically spend a draft night, or when you're watching the whole entire weekend?
Yeah, the last few years as a student at Temple, so we would do like a live show for the first, second and third round from like a bar. So we would go down to like South Philly to a place called the South House, and we do like a live, setup type show in front of like a crowd. Usually the crowd just being friends who would pile into the bar. So that was a fun experience. But before that, usually, just take it in from just sitting, on my couch, honestly, just watch it. But, this year I'll be remote from my apartment, but I'll have the TV set up, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Cool. Very, very nice. Very nice. Well, guys, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. Thank you, everybody who was listening. Make sure to read all of our draft coverage. We'll be covering all 3 nights, and even up to the undrafted free agents as well, too, afterwards. You'll find all that on NJ.com/Eagles, and we look forward to giving you the best coverage we possibly can. So for Bob, for Cayden, I'm Chris. Everybody have a good one. See ya.